right, so let's jump into Ecclesiastes chapter 1. I'm going to get into the kind of theme of the book here in this section, which is vanity. It's not vanity like you think probably vanity means in English, at least in the 21st century. So let me kind of build this a bit here. Okay, so in chapter 1, verse 2, we have what's called the motto of the book. Vanity of vanities, says the teacher, or Kohelet, the assembler. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. And that word there, all, is hakol, the all. Everything is vanity. And vanity of vanities, that's that same structure that you see. It's the superlative, right? Like Song of Songs. It's that Hebrew structure where you say something and then you say of and then itself in the plural. So Holy of Holies, Song of Songs. Vanity of vanities, it means the most holy thing, the Holy of Holies, the most vain thing, the vanity of vanities. Now you might think this means like someone who looks at themselves all the time in the mirror, or I don't know, thinks about how they look all the time. No, in fact, this word here in Hebrew is hevel, which really means vapor or mist or air. It's translated a million different ways in Hebrew. I'm going to give you my own reading on it here, but what I'm going to ask you is, what's your reading of it? So let's just take a look right here at this Vanity of Vanities. Now we'll put a kind of a pin in the question of what does this actually mean. I'm going to minimize myself just so you can don't have to look at me for a minute here. So what does hevel mean? What in the world does it mean? Now, I've already said I think it means breath, but like, what does that mean? What breath of breaths? All is breath? All right, take a look at verses 3 and on. What we have here is a poem. And we start with kind of a big thought, and then we move into the details of the poem. And I'm going to help you read this and just ask questions to you of what do you think you see here? What do people gain from all the toil at which they toil under the sun? That word there, gain, is actually a Hebrew word yitron, which means profit, the end, the edges, the excess. What do you get that's excess from all the toil at which you toil under the sun? And under the sun meaning probably something like just this earth, this life. A generation goes, a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. All right, so we have a stable earth. We have people coming and going, and the question is, what do they gain from all of their coming and going? So the earth sounds stable, except is the earth stable? This is what the poem moves to. The poem actually talks about the earth here, but it sounds oddly stable, but always weirdly moving. The sun rises and the sun goes down and hurries to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Round and round goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, where there they continue to flow. All things are wearisome. All right, so we have the sun, the wind, the streams, the kind of sea is mentioned there. All of these natural things that keep moving. So the issue here is the constant motion and an inability to stop. And then the end there, all things, and this is again that hakol, everything is wearisome, more than one can express. The eye isn't satisfied with seeing, or the ear filled with hearing. So we move from the natural world back to the human. We start with our feeling, it feels wearisome, and we can't really put words to it or name it. And then we move on to this question, is our eye ever satisfied with seeing, or our ear ever filled with hearing? What would happen? What would it be for your ears to be satisfied or filled up with hearing? What would it look like? Or what would you feel like? So this is a really interesting poem, and it moves on, and this verse 9, this kind of philosophical conversation. You can already see it's a bit more philosophical than some other discourses in the Hebrew Bible. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. So there's nothing new under the sun as a refrain in the book as well, just like Vanity of Vanities, which ends the book as well. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? So the question of newness, is anything really new? So we have humans are coming and going, but they're doing the same thing all the time, and it doesn't seem to add up to anything. And the earth keeps doing these same things all the time, which is kind of stable, but there's always something new, but it's never quite new, right? It's always a new iteration of the same old thing. And you can't say, see, this is really truly new about anything. It's all already been here. And then verse 11, the people of long ago are not remembered, nor will there be any remembrance of people yet to come. This is a big deal in Kohelet is the fact that you don't know your descendants, as if you're trying to build up all this stuff with all your accomplishments on earth, and then you hand it down to someone because you can't take it with you. What do you end up gaining from all that toil under the sun if you're going to give it to someone you've never met, or give it to someone who then gives it to someone who you've never met? 2 generations out, you're talking about total strangers. And they're not going to remember you. So what in the world? What are we doing all this for, right? Now, this poem might sound, I don't know, sad or kind of like a downer. Maybe it is in some ways. But what I'm going to ask you is to look through this idea of vanity or hevel and take a look at the reading that you see in Coogan and think about this poem here. How do you read this poem? Or you can ask the question, what is vanity? And in one other specific instance in the book, like what does this author mean by hevel, breath, vapor, vanity? So some people have translated this in some pretty choice ways. BS or worthlessness or absurdity are all translations of that Hebrew word hevel that we're talking about here. So, for example, you can look at verse 14 from chapter 1. I saw all the deeds that were done under the sun, and I see all is vanity and a chasing after wind. What is it to chase after wind? You can also look at chapter 2, verse 1. This is the beginning of the test where the person tests themselves to see if pleasure will end up being something that they can gain. That's kind of a lasting gain here. But it's a vanity is what this person says already at the beginning of the test. So in any event, you can look through the book and find another instance of vanity and try to figure out in that place, what does it mean? And then what would you say the larger meaning of this word vanity is? And like I said, at the end of the book, if you turn to the end, we can see that Vanity of Vanities is super important to this book, but also that this book doesn't kind of go anywhere in the sense that it doesn't take you somewhere that disagrees with itself at the end. Because the end of the author's words in verse 8, there's a little epilogue clearly written by someone else because it mentions the teacher, Kohelet, in a third person. Like, the teacher said these things. But the last thing that the teacher says, at least according to kind of the frame of the story, is verse 8 of chapter 12, Vanity of Vanities, says the teacher, all is vanity. That's it. So it ends the same way it begins. So the question for you is, what do you think vanity means? What does hevel mean? All right, I'll look forward to engaging with y'all in the comments. See y'all in a little bit.